Gleb sighed, frustrated to no end. He was peering through his helmet's visor at an all but ruined iron thruster. He glumly placed his multi-tool back in his mount. It wouldn't be able to help him fix this kind of damage. He suddenly made his way back to the small ship's airlock and climbed in. After the lengthy process of cycling, the airlock was complete. Gleb removed his vac suit and sat down in the cramped cockpit. He thumbed the activation for the distress beacon and leaned towards the microphone. "This is Gleb Nevar of the light transport Seleucia, and I'm in need of assistance. A micrometeorite struck my anterior ion thruster and destroyed it, leaving me stranded off the edge of intergalactic shipping lane 7465B. Gleb spoke into the microphone. He played it back to himself and, satisfied with the message, set it to broadcast on a loop. It must have been at least an hour before the comm finally chimed in acknowledgement of his distress beacon. Gleb hurried back to the cockpit from the small kitchenette in the rear of his ship. He took his seat and thumbed the comm activation. Much to his disappointment, the voice that emanated from the speaker was tinny and robotic. "Greetings, Gleb Nevar. Your distress beacon has been received and processed by Link's Recovery and Repair, and it has been determined that you are outside of service range. We apologize for the inconvenience and wish you luck in solving your predicament." And just like that, the comm fell silent. Gleb stared at the console incredulously. How was he meant to solve this problem himself? Gleb began to go over the scenario in his head. His ship was stranded, which was bad. To make matters worse, he was stranded in intergalactic space. There was quite literally nothing out here except other ships occasionally zipping by in the shipping lane. Those ships were his only hope, Gleb decided. He activated his ship's proximity comms and began calling out to them. It had been hours, almost a standard day. Not one of the passing ships had helped him. Some hadn't even bothered to acknowledge his existence, and others had offered some non-committal excuse or simply told him off. Gleb was growing tired of this. It seemed as if the universe was full of, what was that Death Order phrase? Assholes. Gleb was about to hang the comm set up and just resign himself to his cot, when he felt the steady rumble throughout the hull that indicated the approach of another ship, and a big one at that. Gleb instinctively thumbed the comm button, not sure what he was expecting. "This is Gleb Nevar of the Seleucia. I've been stranded here for almost a day and no one stopped. Please." He spoke into his comm set. The rumbling in the hull continued to intensify as the approaching ship got closer. As the rumbling reached a crescendo, Gleb sighed. Then the rumbling stopped. Gleb's eye widened and he slapped a button on his console, bringing up the external cameras. A truly massive vessel had saddled up next to his comparatively tiny transport, and had already begun to extend mooring clamps in the service umbilical. Gleb's excitement was palpable. Someone had finally stopped to help. The comm set began to chime and Gleb eagerly answered. "This is the transport vessel Gengar. You look like you needed help, friend. Is it okay if I come on over to assess the damage?" The person, captain of the Gengar, Gleb guessed, spoke. "Absolutely. Your assistance would be much appreciated. Although, do you not have an engineering team to send?" Gleb asked, curious as to why the captain of such a large vessel would handle this type of situation personally. "Nope, just me over here. I'll be over in just a minute," replied the person, their comm clicking off. Gleb was astounded. Who could possibly fly a ship that large by themselves? The gravity wave engines alone were bigger than his entire vessel. Gleb's train of thought was interrupted as he observed a massive doorway opening on the side of the large ship. A tall biped clad in a stark white vac suit emerged and then pushed off the side of their ship, propelling them towards the Seleucia. They swung themselves around just before reaching the Seleucia, and their boots made contact with the hull, clamping to the surface with magnets. They slowly made their way over to the airlock and tapped on the small window. They signed, "Can I come in?" and galactic non-standard gestures at him through the cockpit window, and Gleb nodded. He reached over and activated the airlock. After a moment of cycling, the person stepped through the inner door and looked down at Gleb. They were almost twice as tall as him. "What type of atmosphere do you breathe?" the person asked, looking around the interior. "Oh, it's a 70-30 mix of nitrogen and oxygen," Gleb replied. "Cool, me too. Is it okay if I remove my helmet?" the person asked. Gleb simply nodded, eager to see the face of his rescuer. The person reached out with both hands, grasping the sides of the helmet. They twisted it sharply to the right, releasing the atmosphere inside with a hiss, and pulled the helmet off. Long brown locks spilled out onto her shoulders, and she inhaled sharply. Gleb froze in place, a prey reaction inherited from his ancient ancestors. He found himself staring into the two predator-like eyes of a human, a race that hailed from a Class 5 death world called Earth. The human quickly held up her hands in a placating manner. "Hey, it's okay, relax. I'm here to help you," she said softly. Gleb gazed up at the human for a moment before delivering a stiff nod and straightening his posture. "Yes, of course. My anterior iron thruster was destroyed by a micrometeorite and my gravity wave engine cannot function without both iron thrusters operational," Gleb explained. I see. Well, give me an hour or two to work on your ship and I should be able to fix it. Meanwhile, you're more than welcome to use my ship's rec room. It's got a holographic VR room," the human offered, giving Gleb a toothy grin. It was a little unnerving, but Gleb remembered hearing this was a gesture of friendliness among humans. "I believe I will take you up on that offer. I've never had the pleasure of experiencing holo VR," Gleb replied, intrigued by the thought. "It's so much fun, it's almost addictive. Come on, I'll get you set up and then start working on your ship," said the human, gesturing for Gleb to follow. Gleb removed the VR suit and wiped sweat from his brow. "You look like you had fun," came the human's voice from behind him. He turned around to face her. She was leaning against the doorway to the horror room eyeing him. She was no longer clad in her spacesuit, as she had called, and was now wearing simple, close-fitting maintenance garments. "That was literally the most fun I've ever had," Gleb replied, awestruck. The human let out a short laugh. "Hey, I don't believe I got your name," the human inquired, quirking an eyebrow. "Gleb Nevar. Didn't you hear it on my transmission?" Gleb asked her. "Nah, your signal was awful. Only reason I noticed you in the first place is because my ship's proximity sensors flagged your ship," she replied. "Oh, perhaps that's why no one else stopped," Gleb reasoned, although he wasn't sure he believed that. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Gleb. I'm Macy." She offered him her hand. He reached up and grasped it. "You as well, Macy. I do not know what I would have done if you hadn't showed up when you did," Gleb replied gratefully. They dropped the handshake after a few moments, and Macy gestured towards the airlock behind her. "Your ship's all good to go," she said. "Great. What do I owe you?" asked Gleb, withdrawing his credit chit. Macy placed her hands on his and gently shoved it and the chip back into his pocket. "No charge. You needed help, plain and simple," Macy spoke simply. "Thank you so much. I don't know what to say," replied Gleb. Macy held out a slip of paper with a communicator code scrawled on it. She offered a sly wink. "Say you'll call me sometime, cutie." Gleb's face flushed.